Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. It's very, very special to be able to have the Shiur here in Livingston in Yahrtzeit. First 2 years after my brother passed away, we had the Shiur in Chicago. It was very, very special to be home, to be with everyone in the community, people who knew my brother, people who know our family well. And last year, I obviously was not able to make it to Chicago because of the situation that was going on in the world. And this year, it's very special for me specifically to have it, in my home, in my shul here, where amongst, my new family members, my new community members here, it's something very, very special for me. So I thank you for allowing me to host this Shiur here. And every year, I go through, for a couple weeks, thinking about what the topic of the Shiur should be, what the topic should be for this year. And usually I choose something relating to the topic of, the 3 weeks, a little bit, 1 year we did Mashiach, last year we did honoring one's older brother. And I couldn't think of a topic this year. I was, I really hit a writer's block, and I couldn't really think of what to give the Shiur on this year. And one day, Yael and I were sitting on our back porch, and we were thinking a little bit how crazy it is that it's been 4 years since my brother passed away. 4 years. And it feels a little bit like it was yesterday, and it also feels a little bit like it's been 30 years. And I said a line that really got my mind running. And I said to Yael, it's crazy because I don't even remember life with Sam. That was the line I said. And 4 years is a short amount of time. And yet, in my mind, I can't imagine, I can't go into myself where I was 4 years ago. My life has changed so much since then. And I started thinking about other losses that we've experienced and what we have done in order to ensure that that feeling does not happen. And immediately my mind ran to the Beis HaMikdash. To the Beis HaMikdash, which we, as individuals may lose someone we love. We may lose, a family member or friends. But we as a people have lost something so much greater. We've lost, our central connection to Hashem. We've lost our, focal point in our connection and our relationship with Hashem. And Chazal were very smart. And Chazal knew that sometimes after 4 years, you might start to think, I forgot what life was like with X. I forgot what life was like with Y. And so they decided to set certain practices, certain minhagim in place, so that that feeling should never resonate with Klal Yisrael as a whole. That Klal Yisrael should never, ever be able to say, oh, I totally forgot what it was like to have a Beis HaMikdash. So we have certain practices that Chazal have instituted in order for us not to have that feeling. But it begs the question, why is it so important in Yerushalayim? Why is it so important in the Beis HaMikdash? There's so many things in our life that have gone on, so many things in Tanakh that have happened to the Jewish people that we don't have, commemorating services for, and yet, the Beis HaMikdash, we have everything. There's so many practices that have been in our lives, more than we even know, that we'll see tonight. And if you look at source number 1, there's a pasuk that we're all familiar with because of the, many different songs that the pasuk goes to. But im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. That it comes from the Kapitah Tehillim known as Anar as Bavel. Obviously, everyone says that before they bench during the weekday. Anar, it's that thing next to Shir Malos, and everyone's like, what is that? So that's Anar as Bavel. So right in the middle there is im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. That if I forget Yerushalayim, tishkach yamini, it's like my right hand forgetting its purpose. It's like forgetting something so focal, so important to ourselves, like our right hand. Tidbak l'shoni l'chiki im lo ezkerechi, im lo ala es Yerushalayim al rosh simchasi. That our tongue should be stuck to the roof of our mouths if I do not, recall you, if I don't mention you, and if I don't, elevate Yerushalayim above my symptoms. Al Rosh Simchasi, that I need to elevate somehow Yerushalayim in my time of happiness. So still, what is it about Yerushalayim? Why is it so important? So in source number 2, you'll see the Maharal Mikrag, he writes a little bit just about how focused we are on Yerushalayim. We can never forget it. He quotes the pasuk we just read. Why in the bowl? That when the world was created, it was created with a focal point. It was created with a center. And that center is Yerushalayim. Things that are trivial, things that are not so important, things that are just, minor details in our lives, they go to the back of the head. We forget about them easily. They're not something we focus on. Something that is so important to us, something that we can never live without, that you can't forget. So what does the pasuk compare it to? The right hand. Something we can never live without. So look in the bowl. So we forget about it because we're not paying attention to it. But he says, we just said that. So now, the last 2 lines here. Says we cannot go on with our lives. We cannot proceed pretending that everything is the same, pretending that nothing has changed, pretending that it's the same thing as it was 2,000 years ago, or in the case of the generation right after, maybe a week ago. We can't pretend that it's the same. Says we're walking around empty. We're walking around missing a vital piece of ourselves, and we're showing as if we're totally full. That there's nothing doing over here. And so we have an idea to always remember Yerushalayim, and it's not really just an idea. It's brought down lehalacha. And even though the halachas we're going to see soon of the certain practices we have are far into the first section of Shulchan Aruch, in the first siman, in all of Shulchan Aruch, in all of the code of our Jewish law, we have this line, source number 3. That it's something that every single person here needs to worry about, needs to think about, needs to contemplate, that we do not have this Beis HaMikdash. We're about to enter into the 3 weeks. That's the time we usually set aside for thinking about this. But it's something that's supposed to be on our minds all the time. All the time. And why is it? Why are we always supposed to be focused on it? Because source number 4. The Gemara says in Titus and also in Bambasa in the next Gemara, that if you are someone who mourns the loss of the Beis HaMikdash, if you are someone who is focused on commemorating what we are missing, what we are lacking, then you'll be part of the party at the end. You'll be part of the party of the group of people who will be zochet to see the Beis HaMikdash be rebuilt. But if not, that if you are someone who just walks around, as the Maharal said, that you are ose atzmo sholim, you make yourself full, even though be'emes you're chaser, even though in truth you're really lacking. Says for those people, you're not going to be amongst the crew who's going to be able to see Yerushalayim be built. And that's something we daven for 3 times a day. We daven v'sechazena einenu b'shuvcha l'tzion rachayim. Not just that the Jewish people should see it. Einenu, our eyes should see it. I want to be part of that crew. I want to be part of that party who gets to, inaugurate the 3rd Beis HaMikdash. And through that, what do we have to do? You have to be part of that chevra. You have to be part of that group of people who recognize that something's lacking in your life, who recognize that something's a little different. So we turn to source number 5. And that's really the story where we get all of our sources for the halachos that we have in commemorating the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. And I'm not talking about the 3 weeks and the, no swimming during the 9 days and the no eating meat and the, no haircuts and Tisha B'Av, and those are set aside times. What we're going to be discussing tonight are things that are year-round practices that you may not even know about, that you may not even realize, but are brought down in halacha that are supposed to be things, that are supposed to be practices that we show HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single day that our lives are different, that there's something missing here. So if you look at source number 5, we can read the Gemara together. Tanu Rabbanan, Kishacharav Habayis Bishniya, that when the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Prushim Yisrael, Shelo Lechel Basar, V'Shelo Lishtos Yain. There were a group of people who wanted to separate themselves from the enjoyments of this world. They didn't want to eat wine, they didn't want to drink wine, they didn't want to eat meats. That wouldn't go over so well on the Shiur. But they didn't want to have, you see the Kiddush yesterday, we had a ribs. So there were people who didn't want to eat meat, they didn't want to drink wine. So Mitbal Lehen Rabbi Yeshua, Omer Lehen, so Rabbi Yeshua, chances upon these people and says to them, Bonai, Mipnei Ma Iatem Ochlim Basar Ve'enatem Shosin Yayin. This is strange. Jews, we eat, we drink. What are you doing? Why are you, refraining from these activities? Amru loves. They say a killer line back. Nechel Basar. Shemimenu Makribin Agavim Tbeach Ve'achshav Batel. Since a week ago, where would this meat have been? It would have been on the Mizbeach. It would have been a korban to Hashem. Now I'm just supposed to pretend like nothing changed? Like everything's the same? Nishne yayin, shemenaskan al gabi ha-mizbeach ve'achshav batel. I'm supposed to drink wine when a week ago they just used it in the service in the temple. I'm just supposed to go on with my life as nothing ever changed? So Rabbi Yeshua had a good response. Amar lehen, in Cain, lechem lo nechel, shekvar batlu menachos. Oh, so you shouldn't have bread because bread was involved in the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So what, you're not going to have bread anymore? They say, okay, yeah, after the pears. I can have fruits. But no, not so quick. Pears lo nechel, shekvar batlu bikurin. But we know that we bring the first fruits in the Beis Hamikdash. So fruits were also part of the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So you can't have fruits according to your logic. They said, no, it doesn't have to be the first fruits. Maybe it can be the second fruits. Okay, fine, they got him on that one. But what does he come back? He says, Mayim lo nishna. He says, they used water. They used water in the Beis Hamikdash. They did miso chamayim. So what, you're not going to drink water anymore? Shaskim. They had no answer to that. We can live without bread. We can live without our meats. But water, you can't live without water. So what does he say to them? So Amar lehem bonai, bo Amar lechem. Let me tell you what you're supposed to do. Shalol yisabel kol iker iefsha. Says to completely forget, what we had and go on as if nothing ever changed. That for sure you can't do. Why? Shekfar nigzer gzeira. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu already decided. Beis Hamikdash is gone, and we have a chiyuv to remember it, to mourn it. But to take it overboard, that's something we can't do. Why? Because she'en gozing zera al tzibur, ela in king rov tzibur yichol namod ba. That the pasuk says goy kulo, that it talks about the entire nation has to be able to accept something upon themselves. When the rabbis, when Chazal, when they instituted some decree on the Jewish people, they didn't just take in the elite group into mind. They didn't just think, would the top rabbanim in the world be able to sustain this decree? They decided, is the common folk able to do this? Is this something that everyone is going to be able to jump on the bandwagon for or not? And if it wasn't, like saying no one can ever have meat again, no one can ever have wine again, that's something that's a little too far. Something that the majority of the Jewish people would never be able to follow. So what does he say? Elakach amru chachamim. Sad adam is beso b'sid u'meshayir v'otavar mu'at. So he's about to give us the couple of instructions that we have. He says, forget about the wine, you can drink your wine. Forget about the meat, you can eat your meat. What should you do? When you build a house and you plaster the walls, you're supposed to leave over a little bit. You're building this beautiful, nice house. You should leave over a little bit. The kama, how much? Ama al ama, keneged hapesa. So you're supposed to have an amma by an amma. In modern terms, that's anywhere from 18 to 22 inches. Depends who you hold like. So a square like that, you're supposed to leave that in your house. That's number one. Number two, Ose Adam Kol Tzarchei Suda. You're making a whole nice kiddush. You're making a whole nice meal. What should you do? Leave something out. Leave something off the menu. You usually have X, Y, and Z. Just give X and Y. Mahi, what is that? Even kisa the harsano, something small. Fine, next line. That when a woman puts on her jewelry, she shouldn't put on all of her jewelry. She should leave something out. She shouldn't pretend like, everything's the same. You should leave, you can do without the earrings. You can do without that one necklace. So something small. So Maya Rosh Simchasi, 3 lines from the bottom. What does it mean at the end of the pasuk? And then at the end of the next pasuk, Al Rosh Simchasi, that we need to elevate the loss of Yerushalayim above our simchas. He says, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Ze Efer Makla Sheberosh Chasam. That when a Jewish couple gets married, there are a lot of practices at the wedding that we institute to remember the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. One of them is that on the chassan's head, on the groom's head before he goes down, some people do it at the chuppah, after the chuppah, wherever it is. So they put a little bit of ash right here. Put a little bit of ash in the place of the tefillin. That's another thing that the Gemara says that we do in order to remember Yerushalayim. So just as an aside, these seem very, very random, correct? When you build your house, like they're talking real things. We're not going to eat meat. We're not going to drink wine. Here it comes. It's like, okay, when you build a house, you leave something over. When you make a meal, you leave something over. And when you put it on your jewelry, you should leave something. So the Ben Yoyada, Ben Ish Chai says a beautiful, beautiful thought. He says these aren't random things. These aren't just things, he pulled out of his pocket. He says, what did we lose? When we lost the Beis HaMikdash, we lost 3 focal things. We lost 1, the house. We lost the house, the meeting place between us and Hashem. We lost 2, the korbanos, our ability to go and bring a korban and to offer up a sacrifice to Hashem. And 3, we lost, our people, the Kohanim. We lost the people who would serve in the Beis HaMikdash there. So he says, when you build a house, you have to leave something over to remember the house. And when you make a meal, you have to leave something over to remember the meal, to remember the korbanos. And just like the Kohanim had their special garments, their big day kahuna that they would put on every single garment, they couldn't be missing one thing. So for us, when we put on all our jewelry, we should also be missing something. So he says everything connects really to what we used to have in the Beis HaMikdash. But these 4 things, 1, the house, 2, the meal, 3, the jewelry, and 4, during the wedding, the ash at the wedding, these are all brought down to halacha. We'll see in source number 6. So we move to Shulchan Aruch, okay? We're skipping a couple hundred years. So the Shulchan Aruch brings down, there's a whole siman dedicated just to these practices of Zayt Korban, 560 in Aruch. So in the first seif, in source number 6, we had Mishachar Beis HaMikdash, Tiknu Chachamim Shehayu Ba'osa Ador, She'en Bonim La'olam Binyan Nesuyot and Mechuyar Kebinyan HaMalachim, that you shouldn't build the house like you used to. Elatach Beiso V'tit B'Sad B'Sid M'Shayir Bakum Amal Amal K'Neged HaPesach Shalom B'Sid. That when you build your house, like we said, you should leave it over without any plaster, any paint, whatever you're going to do on it. Rather, we should make the cement walls and we should paint them. We should leave something over. It says the Mishnah Berurah on the bottom. Tiknu, in general, he writes, and this is the key for understanding all of these tapanas. This line in Mishnah Berurah is so important. Shekol davar simcha tzarich lasos kol davar zeichel l'korban habayis. How do we know that? Shekasu imo ales Yerushalayim arosh simchasi. That in our times of happiness, a wedding, something so incredible that we have, an amazing simcha, we can't get too carried away. We have to realize that as happy as I am, my rosh simchasi, I need to be Ales Yerushalayim. I need to remember at the most amazing point of the wedding. They just got married. They're about to start dancing. Everyone's going to start going like crazy down the aisle. What do? We start singing. We put the Efer on. We put the ash on. And soon we'll see we break the cup. So all of these things are set so that we don't get carried away in our times of simcha. So what about the house? What about leaving over that little bit? So the Mishnah Berurah says, Taf beso b'tit b'sod b'sidim b'shayir. So how many people in their house have a little square? Not so many. Most people don't. It seems to be that a lot of people rely on the different heterim that we have of not doing this. It's a very good thing to do if anyone's planning on remodeling your house, so you can go home tonight. We'll have knives at the door. You can scrape off a little lama on your house. But most people, haven't really been doing this so much. And the Mishnah Berurah already gives us a little bit of a heter in the bowl. That sometimes when we mix our plaster, we mix it with sand. And when we mix it with sand, it doesn't really have the Shem Sid. It doesn't really have the name of Sid, of the plaster that, the Gemara was talking about. And so already when you don't have that, so Shula, make your Shem Sid. So Vihine Bismanenu lo nagu l'shayir. The Esher Mishum, the Somchen ala Yesh Mekil. So there are some who rely on this leniency that in their house they don't have this Amal. Okay. He ends off with Sarachiyun that people really should do this, and if you can, you should. It's a very nice thing to do, to leave over a little Amal when you build your house. One. So moving on to the next restriction we have, the next institution that we have to remember the Beis Hamikdash. Source number 7. V'chein hiskinu she'arech shulchan laso sulu lo'orchim mechaser mimenu me'at u'meniach makom ponui below ka'ara min ha'ka'aros ha'ru'uyos lase sham. I don't know anyone who does this. So when you make a meal, usually, there's 10 people at the meal, you make 10 dishes. So here, this is saying you should leave something out. Not only you should leave something off the menu, but you should have a spot empty at the table. You should have a spot that, no one's sitting there to show that, the Beis Hamikdash is gone. Ukshea osa takshite hakesed v'azav, mishayra min mine hatakshit shenol gesponem. And when a woman's putting on her jewelry, she shouldn't put it all on. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah, let's see the Biur Halacha, if this is really, if we practice this today. So the Mishnah Berurah says, Hainu, im yesh la harbe mine takshitin lo tasim kula aleh b'vazacha. So already here we have a good head. I don't know how many people, when they put on all their jewelry, they think about Yerushalayim. So this takana was in a time where people didn't have, you get an ear for your anniversary, and then a bracelet for your birthday, and then I know about this, but people didn't have that much jewelry. You got married and you got a nice necklace. For all the anniversaries, I don't know what they used to do. But for us, every anniversary, every wedding, every half birthday, you have to get something big. So nowadays, what's the takana? It's that you should put on every single piece of jewelry you wear at one time. If you did that, you'd probably be looked at in a kind of weird way. We don't usually put on all the jewelry that we have. So already there is a reason why we're not knowing that today. If any of you have the urge to put on every single necklace, every single bracelet, wear 6 earrings, all up your ear that you have, I would recommend against it. And the Biur Halacha says about the Suda, the Chemiskina Sharech Shulchan, he groups together all these things. He says, says we don't really follow these things. We don't really do that. They were instituted by Chazal, but there's reasons why, in every single scenario, why we don't do it. So the meal, for example. The meal, the Kaf HaChaim writes in the next source, the Esher Lasis Tamlazed, Levad Shebismanei L'Hayas Seder L'Tavshilim Shebiviyim L'Fnei Ha'orchim. B'imkein, Shemechaser Tavshil Echa, so he says, what happened back in the day? There was a set menu. On Wednesdays, we had, meatballs and garlic bread and broccoli. Okay, so now the Beis Hamikdash is gone. Let's get rid of the broccoli. So now we're going to sit down at the table and we're going to realize, hey, where's the broccoli? Oh, don't you remember last week, the Beis Hamikdash? Okay, so now we'll remember. Nowadays, we don't have such a set menu with, everything being so specific. So if we left something off the menu, we wouldn't notice it. It wouldn't be something that would catch our eye. It wouldn't be something that we would pay attention to. That it must be because the Beis Hamikdash is gone.
So already, 1, 2, 3, we don't really, the first one we should definitely do. We should leave over a little bit, but the table, leaving over a spot, leaving over a meal, or the jewelry, we don't really do. So, okay, we're pretty good right now. So source number 8, the continuation of that Shulchan Aruch. Uksha no se isha, when a man takes a wife to be his wife. So we see it's brought down to Shulchan Aruch. You're supposed to take a little ash, put it on the places it's filling right over here, and that's supposed to be Zecher L'Korban. Says the Rambam, V'yesh mekomos shenohu l'shaber kos b'shas chuppah. So here we have the source for breaking the glass at the time of the chuppah. Everyone else mazel tov. That's what we do. Olasum mapa shchora. He gives other eitzes. V'chol eila hadvarim. The last line here, second last line. V'chol eila hadvarim k'dei lizkor es Yerushalayim. And at the time of the wedding, it's such an amazing time of simcha. We're supposed to remember what we're missing. So it's interesting because, first of all, the kli zechuches, the glass that we do, it's brought down in many places. Reuven writes it in one of his chuvas. We'll see a little bit of the chuva. It's very funny, very fun, whatever. We'll see. And Reuven writes about it, the Pri Megadim writes about it, but there's a reason why we do specifically glass. That with all the different, materials that we have in the time of the Gemara that we talk about, there's different qualities that we assign to those materials. And something that the Gemara always talks about when it comes to glass, when it comes to zechus, it says yesh lo takana. What does that mean? It means that if glass breaks, you don't have to throw it in the garbage. We do because, you go to Amazing Savings down the road and we buy another glass bowl. But in the time of Chazal, when they didn't really have an Amazing Savings, so what did they do? They took a glass, okay, we'll mold it back together and we'll fix it. We'll make a new glass bowl. It's something that you can fix easily. You melt it down and you create a new glass bowl. So Chazal, the Achronim say that that's the reason why we have glass specifically, to remember Yerushalayim. That even though right now it might be broken, but what glass symbolizes, it's yesh lo takana. It's something that can so easily be fixed. It's something that we can put together and become whole again. So at the time when we're remembering what is broken in our lives, what is missing from our lives, the Beis HaMikdash is gone, so we want that message of yesh lo takana, that there's some fix that can happen. There's some takana that can bring Yerushalayim back together, that can bring this avelus into a simcha. So Reuven has a beautiful tshuva in source number 9. It's very interesting. When he talks about the breaking of the glass, so he says, and the Sfardim are very, Henry, you can confirm for me, the Sfardim are very, very sharp, words. They don't hold back anything. Ashkenazim, they write, I don't think it's so right that some people are doing these things. The Sfardim, they write, these idiots, they're crazy, they're out of their minds. So you'll see Reuven writes, Ve'ata dashuba rabim ve'amei ha'aretz. We have people who are out of their minds over here. The nevach lehem liyadon l'simcha. What we have things that are supposed to be liyadon, and now they're l'simcha. We have things that are supposed to be sadness, and we've turned them into the greatest happiness. What is he talking about? Ki b'shas shviras hakedera piyam yimalei schok. Says when everyone, when we break the glass under the chuppah, what does everyone say? Mazel tov, mazel tov. That in a time of happiness, that's exactly where we're supposed to be shaking. It's something that was instituted. What are we doing? Screaming mazel tov, going so happy at a time of such sadness. So he brings down Shalos Chuvas Mishpatim Zil, Hiskim, to the person who was asking him, and he says they wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to get rid of it because everyone says Siman Tov and Mazel Tov, right when you break the glass. So in the bold, but Reuven finishes off and he says instead of being a vatal, says we should make it into a little bit more of a ceremony. The person who's the MC or the person who's the Masada Kedushin, they should say, okay, we're doing this. It shouldn't just be something people do and they break and everyone says Mazel. There are sources within halacha. Zalman, I know, is quoted as saying that it's okay to say Mazel Tov, so you can still scream Mazel Tov for that. But it's something to think about. This is something that was instituted as a reminder that the Beis HaMikdash is gone.
that even at the time of our greatest simcha, we're lacking. So wow, we shouldn't be screaming Mazel Tov. Yeah.
I noticed amongst some of your Rosh Yeshivas and your Yeshiva that they're makbid that chuppah, they break the glass during the singing of Meshkach not after.
Yeah. So
people don't realize a lot that the song is already broken.
yes. So at my wedding, my Masada Kedushin, Ami Merzel, he told me to do that also. So I guess maybe they're knowing in Yerushalayim. I think the Nevin's house says to do that as well. The problem with that is, they break it and then, Imeshach ends and then everyone's like looking around. What do I do now? And then there's always the Masada Kedushin. I remember at my friend's wedding, the rabbi who was the Masada Kedushin, there was a very long and awkward pause, and he just goes, Mazel Tov, and everyone jumped up, and the whole everyone started singing and dancing. Okay, fine. So we're so used to the way that it is. But you're right. There have been certain institutions to maybe break it during the singing of Imeshkach to try to tie it a little bit more to the morning and a little bit less to the okay. So right now, let's summarize a little bit. So we have Yerushalayim, we have Imeshkach Yerushalayim. We have to remember the Churban, we have to remember the destruction. And Chazal have instituted certain things, whether they're knowing nowadays or not. Chazal instituted certain mourning practices, year-long mourning practices, that are supposed to keep our minds on what we are missing. That all of these things, leaving something out at the table, leaving something out of our jewelry, leaving something out in our house, we're trying to, it's not so subtle, something is lacking, something is missing from our lives. And yet, when you look at other institutions that were made, Zecher L'Mikdash, that were made as a remembrance for the Beis HaMikdash, they carry with them a different tune. So now I'd like to take a big shift. Before we were talking about all of these things of Avelos, all of these things of, something's missing and lacking from our lives. And now I'd like to shift to source number 10. The Mishnah in Sukkah says, Birishona hayalulav nitel b'mikdash shiva. That what we do, we shake our lulavs all 7 days, right? So originally that was only something that was done in the Mikdash, in the Beis HaMikdash. Ubimedina yom echad. Everywhere else you only took it on the first day. Lukachtem lachen, only on day one you take it. In the Beis HaMikdash, they used to do it all 7. You're thinking, what are you talking about? We do it all 7. So Mishachar Beis HaMikdash, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, She'lulav nitel b'medina shiva zecher l'mikdash. That after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, all of a sudden now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, now that the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, as a remembrance to what was, as a remembrance to what was in the Beis HaMikdash, we are all going to take our lulav all 7 days. So how did we know that this is something that we're supposed to do? Make a zecher l'mikdash. Says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. How did we know that this is something we do? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan to Amar Kro, ki alea rucha loch umi mako soyich pa'ech nevu mashem ki nidach l'kar loch tzion hi doresh ein la. That I will, restore the health to you, heal you of your wounds, because they called you a nidacha, an outcast. Tzion, no one seeks her. Tzion, doresh ein la. There's no one seeking her. So says the Gemara, doresh ein la michlal t'bayit trisha. So you make use your thumb. If no one's seeking out Yerushalayim, it seems that we're supposed to be seeking out Yerushalayim. We're supposed to, try and remember what was. We're supposed to try and, put ourselves in that situation, in that mode to remember what was in Yerushalayim. So you'll see in source number 11, I copied from the Encyclopedia Talmudit. We don't have to run around to all the sources all around Shas for all of these things. They have it very nice in a concise little paragraph here from source number 11. So many things we do, we don't even realize that they're Zecher L'Mikdash, that they're put in place as a remembrance of what used to be in the Beis HaMikdash. So just to go through a couple of them. Hoshanis, that Nobu Yisrael b'chol ha'makomos la'amyach b'chag ha'sukkos, teva be'encem Beis HaKnesses. They would put something in the middle of the Beis HaMikdash, in the Beis HaKnesses. U'makifun oso b'chol yom. They would go around in a circle, singing Shiur, so that's what they used to do. And on day number 7, what did we used to do? We used to take the Arava b'shvi shel chag ha'sukkos k'dei l'chabot ba. to whack on the bottom. Rabbi Klipnov always says, if any non-Jew walked into shul on any day of the year, the worst day to come in is Hoshana Rabbah. Everyone's whacking the trees all over the place. They think we're the craziest people in the world, more than they already do. So why do we do that? Zeicher L'Mikdash. That's what they used to do. So this is very important. This is for you, Mr. Shaw. V'nadu she'ashamish shel Beis HaKnesses maybe a Rav Limkor. The shamish in the Beis HaKnesses used to come with the different arabos to sell them to the different people. So we have it stationed in a nice little basket there. Put your $5 and you get your arab. So all those things, that's done because we used to do that in the Beis HaMikdash. That's what we used to do at the time. More things, Hanukkah, those are zecher to the nes that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. Parsha Shkolim, that's what, zecher to, in the Bisman of Beis HaMikdash, Hayakayim, they used to come and they used to say, it's Parsha Shkolim, everyone bring. Moror, we have it at the Seder that we used to do, Minat Torah in the time that the Beis HaMikdash was time. And now that the Beis HaMikdash is no longer, we instituted Maror. Good. What do we do after Maror? The Korach sandwich. My sister-in-law loves the Korach sandwich. During Chol Hamoed, we were sitting, outside, and everyone's making, marshmallows or whatever they were doing on the bonfire. And my sister-in-law comes out with 2 pieces of shmor matzah, a little horseradish, and some lettuce and charosas. I'm like, you're out of your mind. So some people like the Korach sandwich. Okay. So what do we say though? We say Zeicher L'Mikdash Kehillel. That's something we do as a remembrance to what was. The Afikomen, we know that's Zeicher L'Pesach. And finally, Sfir Sa'omer says in the last little dash over there, Sfir Sa'omer B'zman Hazeh She'ein Omer, when we don't have the Omer offering, Eino Elamid Rabbanan. It's only something that's of rabbinic nature. We should Zeicher L'Mikdash. Why do we do it? We do it as a remembrance to what was. Ela She'yesh Min HaRishonim, there are some who hold that it's actually not Zeicher L'Mikdash, but we do have an opinion that it is Zeicher L'Mikdash. Fine. So right then and there, we see that there's so many things during our calendar year that we do as a remembrance to what was in the Beis HaMikdash. But there's something a little different about these things. Meaning the first group that we talked about were things that were, we leave over a plate at our table. We leave over a seat. When we put on all our jewelry, we leave something off. When we build a house, we leave something out. They're mourning practices. This, Hoshana Rabbah, that's not a mourning practice. That's something very exciting. That's something we, run around the bima doing. Well, what is that about? Korech, sister-in-law loves Korech. That would be pretty inappropriate if that was a velos minute. So comes the Baal Ba'or and asks a wonderful question in source number 12, something that's written about a lot during the time of Sfiras Omer. And he asks, Sfiras Omer yesh shalin, source number 12, matam ein anu omrim bozman. So we have many mitzvahs during the year that we do. And what do we do? The first time we do that, Shechiyanu, Vikiyamanu, Viyanu, Lazmanazah. We take the lulav day 1, we make a Shechiyah. So many other mitzvahs that we do. We make a Shechiyah. Sfiras Omer, why don't we make a Shechiyah? Why is there no bracha that is instituted for that mitzvah? Uklalo shel davar, ein lanu lahachmir b'sfiras ha'omer she'eno ela lezecher ba'alma. He says we're not going to institute a shechiyanu on something that's just a zecher, something that's just a remembrance. But didn't we just say that on lulav we make a shechiyanu, and lulav we know from the Mishnah in Sukkah is something that's only instituted as a remembrance to the Beis HaMikdash. So which one is it? If you're going to remember, if it's only a remembrance and you're not going to make a shechiyanu, so then that should apply to all the remembrances. That should apply to all the zechiros that we have. We just listed Hoshanas and Chanukah and Shtalim and Bar and Korach. All these things should all be equal. But he says it's different. Ulasfiras ha'omer ein bo zecher l'shum hana ela la'agmos nafshenu l'chorban beis l'lein. That when we have Sfiras ha'omer, this isn't a zecher like lulav. This isn't something that we're remembering how wonderful the Beis HaMikdash was. We're remembering that the Beis HaMikdash was gone. And this point, so for that, we're not going to have a bracha of Shechiyanu B'kiyam B'Giyanu L'Zman. That's a happy bracha that we make. So for lulav, when we're dancing around and we're holding our lulav, we're going to make that bracha. But for Sfiras Omer, which is really a sad thing, it's about the churban that we have. In many ways, Sfiras Omer is about a churban that we have. So we're not going to make that bracha. And this distinction is brought out beautifully by Rav Soloveitchik in a lot of his writings. I bring it here in source number 13 from Mipnei Harab, from the Sefer of Rav Shechter Shlita. And he asks the question a little bit in a different way. He doesn't say, why is there no Shechianu by Sfiras Omer? He says, why by Sfiras Omer do we say the Yehi Ratzon Sheibane Beis HaMikdash? We say, Harachamanu Yachazir Lanu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring back to us the service in the Beis HaMikdash that we don't have now, that we're lacking. So he says, at the end of line number 1, Mashe Ein Kein Belulav, after Shtei Takanos Elu Hein Zecher Mikdash. Says, if both things are a remembrance for the Beis HaMikdash, then why not by both things do we say at the end, Hashem should return to us the Beis HaMikdash? It's very simple. If something is a remembrance for X, so afterwards you should have a tefillah that, b'schus us doing this mitzvah, we should return to X. And yet, by Sfiras Omer we have it, and by Lulav we don't, even though that's also Zecher Mikdash. So he says beautifully. Yesh lefarish the dafka b'Sfiras Omer. Says this is something that's only specific by this mitzvah. Why? Shehi Zeicha lechurban habayis. That is a remembrance for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Ukidamashma b'divrei habalam or sheyizkar. Hinhigu lomar tchinas harachaman hanisker le'el. So because it's about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, we need to daven that it should be rebuilt. The hargashas hachurban va'avelus alav mechayeves b'tfila mitzidenu al binyan habayis. Exactly what we just said. Ach b'netilas lulav kol shiva. This is the chiluk. This is the distinction that we have to be a little sharp on. It's that when it comes to lulav, it's very different. Yes, it's a remembrance for the Beis HaMikdash. Sfiras Omer, though, that's about the Beis HaMikdash being destroyed. Lulav is about what happened in the Beis HaMikdash. She'enan zecher l'churban. It's not about the destruction. Ela adarabah, zecher l'mikdash b'binyana. It's a remembrance of what the Beis HaMikdash was like when it was standing, when it was built. And for that, we're not going to talk about it being rebuilt because we're already acting out what it was like when it was around. So we see beautifully a big shift. In the beginning of the Shiur, we were talking about all these different avelus, mourning practices, leaving something over at the table, leaving a piece of jewelry off. When you build your house, you leave over, 22 inches by 22 inches. You leave it out. And yet there's a whole other category that's not zecher l'churban, not a remembrance of what was destroyed. So we have to feel destroyed in some way. We have to leave something out of our lives because something is left out of our lives, the Beis HaMikdash. But rather it's a zecher l'mikdash. It's a remembrance of what was. It's a remembrance of how we acted when that Beis HaMikdash was around. It's what was versus what is right now. What was, we were full. We used to take the lulav all 7 days and dance around. We used to do Sfiras Omer. We used to have the korach sandwich. We used to do all of these things. So we're going to institute those into our lives. We're going to make those part of our daily lives, our yearly lives. But the first category, that's not what was. That's what is right now. We are lacking. Something is missing from us right now. And that we have to show. We have to leave something out. We have to leave something off the menu. We have to leave the jewelry off. So they're two completely distinct categories. And I think, if you allow, we could stretch this a little bit. That the Rav was talking about the practices of Sfiras Omer, of Lulav, but I think it fits so beautifully into how we are Noeg Avelus in general, into how we practice our own mourning through the things that we have lost in our own lives. But what's the first category? We usually focus so much on the first category. What we're hearing right now, what Chazal are telling us, is you need both. We focus on the first category. Al Rosh Simchasi, in Lo Ales Yerushalayim Rosh Simchasi. I can't tell you, Baruch Hashem, there are two of them sitting right over there, the two little grandkids over there. Those are the two latest and greatest. But, not greatest. Those are the two latest and greatest. But I can't tell you, there's how many grandkids now? 7? Every single one of them is the most beautiful and amazing, amazing simcha you could never imagine. For me, for my sisters, for my parents. but I don't think I speak for myself when they all carry along with them some little mark, some little sadness. My beautiful Liba and my beautiful Rachel, I play with them all day. And now I'm a stay-at-home dad, but I play with them all day. And there's always some part of me that's so happy. And yet, there's always some part of me that always in the back of my mind is my brother will never meet these kids. My brother will not be at these girls' bat mitzvahs. My brother will not dance at their weddings. He'll never meet them. He'll never know a thing about them. And we focus on that. We're Ma'ala Es Yerushalayim Al Rosh Simchas. We mention what we are losing and what we are missing so much at the time of our simchas, and we focus on it. And to us, that is mourning. That is how we remember. That when there's some beautiful event that's going on, the Masada Kedushin always gets up and we remember those who are not with us today, but are looking down. I got it right? Okay. So they always say that. And we focus so much on those things, what we are missing, what is lacking from our lives. But what the Rav is telling us, and what Chazal are really telling us, is that in order to properly remember something, it can't just be the Zecher L'Churban. It can't just be focusing on what we are missing now in our lives because X is gone, because that person is gone, because the Beis HaMikdash is gone. We can't only focus on how we are different because we do not have X in our lives. We need to focus on how we are different because we had X in our lives. We need to focus not only on how we have changed because that person has died. We need to focus on how we have changed because that person has lived. The Beis HaMikdash influenced so much of our practices that we do today. We used to do it in the Beis HaMikdash like that, and that's how we do it now. And there's so much that we can take from the people, from the things, from the family members, from the friends that we have lost, that we can incorporate into our everyday, the character traits of those who we have lost, the symbols of hope and of justice and of kindness and whoever the person is that you have lost. There's so much more than just being Ma'ala Es Yerushalayim Al Rosh Simchasi. There's so much more than just the Zecher L'Churban. You need it. He says, Lis'abel, to totally forget about it, Iyasha. Shekvar Nigzer Gzeira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decided this is what's going to happen. That person is no longer in your life. The Beis HaMikdash is gone. It's gone. Shekvar Nigzer Gzeira. It happened. So you can't pretend like it's the same. You can't pretend like nothing's doing. But to go so overboard, to only focus on the churban, to only focus on the destruction that you're not supposed to do. Chazal instituted, they didn't want us to look at the Beis HaMikdash as something that, Nabach, we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. Look at what we're missing. Look at what we're missing. Look at what we're missing. They instituted all of these different takanos, all of these different remembrances, not just so that we should focus on what we have lost, but to focus also on what we have. What was so focal in our lives, the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that closeness that we once had. And the same is true by our loved ones. That to not only focus on how our lives are so different because they're gone, but to take their character traits, to take the important values that they had, to take the morals, the ethics that that person lived by, and instill those into our daily lives. That we should continue to be bound up with them in the eternal bounds of life. That through us living the way they lived, through taking on their positive character traits, through learning from them constantly, from living a life that they would be proud of. So my daughters will know my brother. My daughters will know them. Because you take the beautiful character traits, you take the lessons, you take the stories, you take the midos, and you bring that over. You live your life in that way. So that's something that's not about what we lost, but it's focusing on what we have. In the same way we should do that for our loved ones, same way that we should live our lives in a way that would make them proud, and to take the beauty from their lives and instill it into ours. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should do the same thing to our Beis HaMikdash. and not only focus on the Zeichel L'Churban. And as we enter these 3 weeks, we should have this in mind. Not only what is gone, what we once had, Bez Hashem, what we should have very, very soon.